getting out that needed to get out more forcefully recently? Maybe since Massachusetts or through the broader criticism you've been receiving over the Abdul Muttalib case itself? Because Jake's right. You look at this body of communication, it's not only different in volume, but it's different in content and tone than what we've seen for the past month or so.
Well, obviously this is a change in debate. Obviously this is a change in debate, and this administration is doing everything it can to both make sure the American people know exactly what's happening inside the administration, and also to answer questions that people might have or challenges that might come about the way that we're doing things. But I don't know that I necessarily agree that we're out there more aggressively, because if you consider the fact that ever since this incident on Christmas Day, we have been very aggressive in taking this on.
So were you seething? Did you say day after day we're getting hit by unfair criticism, we got to answer it?
Well, obviously nobody likes to take on criticism, but it's Washington. And when you get a bunch of politicians talking about issues, and you get a bunch of folks who flip-flop from one part of an issue to another part of an issue, but there's no reason for them to have done it except that there happens to be a Democratic president as opposed to a Republican president in place. You know, the president's view is that national security ought to be more important than an individual's job security if they're a politician. And so, no, I wouldn't necessarily characterize how we feel the way that you have, but we have a job to do to make sure the American people know everything that we're doing to keep them safe, and we're going to continue to do that.
Questions that were raised that you've begun to answer with more information, as you've said here at this briefing, were raised simply for political reasons or because people were legitimately, though politicians, were curious?
Well, I don't know that I'm in a position to render a verdict on the motives necessarily, but the questions were raised and we answered them.
Can you, just a couple of things. The Super Bowl party, do you have a...
Nope.
Okay. Well, there is one, yes, but you've got no details.
Yep.
The Tuesday meeting will be with the...
Bipartisan, bicameral
yes, that's the first of the monthlies?
Yep.
No particular agenda, just...
Well, I'm sure the agenda will be taking on some of the urgent challenges we face. Jobs, the economy, what we can do on health care. So I think that some of those things will certainly be on the agenda.
One last thing. Tim Shriver's here, but other groups are here. It seems that there's something else that needs to be communicated than just directly to Tim Shriver about what Rahm said and what was quoted in the papers last week.
What's the question?
What else needs to be, why bring in this larger group? Is there something the administration is trying to get across to this larger group of interested parties on this issue as a result of what was published about what Rahm said last August?
You know, look, this is something that happened in August. It's something that Rahm has apologized for. It's, you know, issues of derogatory comments that make fun of one group or pit one against the other don't do anything to further our political discourse. And for that, Rahm apologized, and we're looking to move forward here.
Did the president ask him to apologize?
I don't know what conversations Rahm had with the president about that. Fletcher?
Thanks, Bill.
Yeah, Tuesday's meeting seems to harken back to some of the president's early outreach efforts in the early days of his administration. And after those, as we know, Democrats wanted alone a stimulus in health care. What gives him any optimism that things will be different now? Does he get any indication from Republicans that they want to play?
Well, if you listen to what Republicans have been saying, they say that they want to work with the president on the economy and on health care. Like, they're obviously still attacking in ways that they've attacked in the past, but you know, if you look at some of the elections that have happened over the course of the last year, what the American people have said is they want folks in Washington to work together. The president firmly believes that the way that we can get to the best solutions and the best ideas is by working with Democrats and Republicans to get it done. So it may be difficult to get that done in Washington in this context. It may not happen overnight, but the president's committed to working with Democrats and Republicans. But as he said in the State of the Union, if Republicans won't come along, he's got a duty to govern. So he's going to do everything that he can in order to take on the things that the American people sent him here to take on.
Has he seen any action on the Republican side to give him any sense of optimism yet, or is it just what they said?
We're just you got to chip away at bipartisanship one little bit at a time.
Okay, and one other thing on your other point, is there some concern in the administration that somehow this idea that you're not doing everything possible to keep the American people safe is something that's taken hold in the population? Is that a concern?
Well, the president wants to make sure that people know what the administration's doing, and he's making an effort to do that. But if you, I hesitate to do this, but the only data that we have that shows how the American people are viewing these issues is public opinion polling, and public opinion polling shows, in poll after poll after poll, that the American people think that that the president is doing a good job to keep them safe, that he is effectively conducting this fight against extremists, and all we can do is everything we can to make sure that they know exactly what's going on.
So like the point-by-point pushback on Collins and things like that, that's not rooted in some concern?
I mean, if the only data that we have are polls that say that the American people are supporting the way that we're conducting this, it would sort of get at the premise of your question. Ann?
Bill,
Does the president think that Toyota should be hit with civil penalties for slow reaction?
I think this is, the issue of what ought to happen to Toyota is something that's happening, that is being discussed over at NHTSA and the Department of Transportation. I'd refer you there.
Would that reach the president's level, something like that, considering the safety implications for drivers?
Well, at this point, for starters, the president thinks it is critically important that the American people on our roads and highways are safe. And he thinks that the Department of Transportation and NHTSA have done a good job at pushing Toyota to make sure that people are informed about what's going on, to make sure that those vehicles were recalled. And going forward, the place to get answers on what comes next are the Department of Transportation and NHTSA.
Bill.
Mara,
Yeah.
1 second.
I just have questions about the Senate Democrats meeting. You said that last Friday was successful because it was so spontaneous.
In part.
Pardon?
In part.
In part, because it was so spontaneous. How spontaneous do you think today was? I know that's not fair.
Well, in fairness, we did tell them we were coming.
I'm talking about the session itself, not the fact you showed up.
I think that if you look at the
question.
questions, they weren't softballs. They were tough questions that the president took on. They had a good exchange.
Okay. But my other question about it is
hard to gauge.
My other question, I mean, today was a real kind of, he really appealed to them to practice conviction politics instead of survival politics or calculation politics, and talked about the importance of leading and pushing forward and getting health care done. Yet, you seem